They called her Shadow Walker, but not as a compliment. Marine Corporal Maya Rodriguez had been dismissed, mocked, and sidelined for 8 months. When 24 Navy SEALs found themselves surrounded by 200 enemy fighters in the mountains of Afghanistan, every qualified sniper was either dead or pinned down. That's when someone remembered the woman they'd been ignoring. What happened next took exactly 47 minutes and 31 shots. But here's what the classified reports won't tell you about those 31 bullets that traveled over 1,300 meters through howling mountain winds. Mountain winds, bone-chilling, cold automatic weapons fire, echoing off granite cliffs. An American SEAL team surrounded, ammunition nearly exhausted, blood-streaked faces, desperate eyes scanning for escape routes that simply didn't exist. One soldier whispered hoarsely, "This is it. No air support coming. We're already ghosts." But just when every hope had evaporated, a single rifle shot cracked through the mountain air. The entire valley fell silent. An enemy fighter dropped instantly. Maya Rodriguez, 28, possessed raven black hair pulled back in a regulation bun and a compact frame that suggested endurance despite her smaller stature. Growing up in Colorado's rugged Rocky Mountain terrain, she had spent countless hours hunting with her grandfather across unforgiving alpine faces. Those expeditions taught her to read altitude wind patterns, practice infinite patience, and understand that precision mattered infinitely more than speed. When she enlisted, her dream was crystal clear: become a military sniper. But the unit had different plans. "That rifle's too heavy for you," Rodriguez, her commanding officer, had declared during her first week. "Maybe you should stick to communications and supply coordination." They gave her the nickname Shadow Walker, someone who followed real soldiers but could never become one herself. At the rifle range, when Maya methodically adjusted her scope settings with the care of a master craftsman, male soldiers would mock her attention to detail. "Trying to shoot satellites, sweetheart," they'd call out laughing as she ignored their comments and continued her preparations. During tactical briefings, when she suggested establishing an overwatch position on the eastern ridge that overlooked their operational area, the entire room erupted in laughter. "That climb will finish you before the enemy even notices," someone shouted from the back. Rodriguez's rear support only Staff Sergeant Martinez would say, dismissing her input without consideration. Night after night, while her teammates shared stories and built camaraderie, Maya slipped away to the training ground. She would lie in the freezing mountain air, practicing breathing techniques, perfecting her trigger control, and studying the mathematical relationships between altitude, wind speed, and bullet trajectory. During these solitary sessions, she remembered her grandfather's words from their last hunting expedition together. "Nieta, you don't need many shots in life, but the ones you do take must count for everything." The constant dismissal created a cold patience inside her, like steel being forged through repeated heating and cooling. Each "maybe next time" and "stick to what you know" added another layer to her determination. Maya remembered those nights at Camp Pendleton when the others were sleeping or joking around the fire. She would slip out quietly carrying the long rifle that everyone said was too heavy for her. Lying in the cold dirt beneath the California sky, she slowed her breathing until the world felt suspended between heartbeats. Each shot she took against the steel targets echoed across the dark hills like a promise. She thought about her grandfather on those frozen mornings in Colorado, teaching her how the wind shifted with the ridges, how snow carried sound differently than dirt, and how a single clean shot could mean survival. The men had laughed when she measured wind with a strip of fabric tied to her barrel, but Maya never laughed back. She simply noted the gust, adjusted her scope, and told herself that one day those small habits might be the difference between life and death. What should have been a 25-minute extraction became a desperate fight for survival against an entire company that had been waiting in ambush. The SEAL team split into 4 fire teams, tried to establish defensive positions among the rubble of abandoned mining structures. But superior numbers and coordinated tactics forced them into an increasingly small perimeter with limited cover and no escape routes. Radio chatter told the story of a mission falling apart. Alpha team pinned down, multiple machine gun positions. Bravo taking heavy fire from elevated positions. Charlie team, we've got RPGs coming in from 4 directions. Martinez's voice cut through the static with growing desperation. Base, this is Viper 7. We are surrounded and heavily outnumbered. Ammunition running critically low. Request immediate evacuation. The response crushed every hope they had maintained. Viper 7, negative on air support. Weather conditions prevent helicopter operations. You are on your own until dawn. Dawn was 8 hours away. Maya sat with the communications team, her Barrett rifle across her knees, listening to her teammates, slowly being overwhelmed by an enemy that had planned this engagement perfectly. One soldier whispered what everyone was thinking. We won't last 45 minutes against this. The mathematics were brutal and simple. 24 Americans against more than 200 well-armed, well-positioned fighters who controlled every advantage. Maya's internal war began raging with an intensity that matched the external combat. If she followed orders, she would remain in the rear area, maintaining radio contact while watching her teammates get systematically eliminated. If she broke protocol, she could attempt to reach the eastern ridge she had identified during mission planning, the position that had been dismissed as tactically impractical. But breaking orders meant risking everything on her own capabilities that had never been tested under real combat conditions. Fear crashed over her in waves. What if she missed critical shots? What if she gave away her position to enemy counter-snipers? What if her attempt to help actually made the situation worse for everyone? But anger provided fuel for courage. She remembered every dismissive comment, every condescending laugh, every assumption that she wasn't capable of contributing to real combat operations. Her grandfather's voice echoed through the chaos. When everyone says it's over, Nieta, that's when your shot matters most. Maya made her decision with crystal clarity. She keyed a radio one final time. Communications maintaining position, she reported, knowing it was a necessary lie. Then she grabbed her rifle, spare ammunition, and rangefinder and began the treacherous climb toward the ridge that might save her teammates' lives. The ascent was everything her teammates had predicted, steep, exposed, and brutally difficult to navigate while carrying 40 pounds of sniper equipment. Sharp rocks tore at her hands and knees. Mountain wind carried the sounds of intensifying combat from the valley below. Each meter climbed represented a question that might determine everyone's fate. Am I climbing toward their salvation or just postponing the inevitable? But Maya had studied this terrain during mission preparation. She knew every rock formation, every potential route, every angle that would provide concealment from enemy observation. As she climbed automatic weapons, fire continued echoing from the compound. Each burst meant her teammates were still alive, still fighting, but also still dying one by one as their ammunition dwindled and enemy pressure increased. Maya reached the ridgeline just as Martinez's voice crackled through her earpiece. All units prepare for final defensive positions. We're almost out of options. She settled into a prone shooting position among the granite boulders, her Barrett rifle steady on its bipod. Through her scope, the compound spread out below, like a deadly chessboard where her teammates were trapped in an impossible game. She could see every enemy position, every muzzle flash, every tactical advantage that the insurgents had established through careful planning. But she could also see something else, opportunities that ground-level perspective made impossible to identify. Maya Rodriguez had spent her entire military career being overlooked and underestimated. Now, for the first time, being invisible was exactly what the situation demanded. Her finger found the trigger, and she began the most important shooting of her life. 24 lives depended on her ability to deliver precision fire from a position that everyone had dismissed as tactically impossible. The ridge that was supposed to be too difficult to reach had become the only place where victory was even remotely possible. Maya whispered the same prayer her grandfather had taught her before every hunting expedition, make it count. Then she began systematically changing the course of a battle that everyone had already written off as unwinnable. Martinez was reaching for his radio to initiate surrender negotiations when the impossible happened. Crack! A single rifle shot echoed across the valley from high above their position. The heavy machine gun that had been systematically destroying their defensive perimeter went silent instantly. Every SEAL in the valley froze in stunned disbelief. Who the hell fired that? Martinez demanded, spinning around to identify the source of salvation that couldn't possibly exist. Before anyone could respond, another shot rang out, then another. But the most incredible aspect wasn't her accuracy, it was her positioning. Maya had somehow climbed a nearly vertical rock face in darkness, carrying heavy sniper equipment, and established a firing position that provided clear lines of sight to threats that ground-level perspectives made invisible. Martinez watched through his scope as Maya shifted positions between shots, never firing from the same location twice, never giving enemy counter-snipers an opportunity to locate and neutralize her. She moved through that rocky terrain like she had been born there, using shadows and stone formations for concealment in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Her voice came through the radio with calm professionalism that contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding them. Guardian Overwatch to Viper 7. Move northeast toward the compound. I'll provide cover. Martinez realized he was witnessing something that would be studied in military academies for decades. A single operator changing the outcome of an entire engagement through perfect application of marksmanship skills under extreme pressure. The tide of battle was turning with each shot Maya fired. Enemy fighters who had been confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage began withdrawing to more defensible positions. The coordinated assault that had trapped the Americans dissolved into confused, scattered resistance as key personnel disappeared one by one. Maya's methodical elimination of high-value targets was breaking the backbone of their entire tactical plan. But she wasn't finished yet. Through her scope, Maya identified the ultimate target. Martinez watched through his binoculars as the enemy commander dropped instantly, his radio scattering across the rocks. The remaining fighters, seeing their leader fall to an invisible sniper who could reach them from impossible distances, began a panicked retreat into the surrounding mountains. Within minutes, the valley fell completely silent except for wind whistling through broken structures. Maya Rodriguez had just saved 24 lives with fewer than 31 carefully placed shots fired from a position that everyone had dismissed as tactically impossible. As extraction helicopters finally arrived at dawn, Martinez couldn't stop staring at the eastern ridge where their salvation had appeared. The woman they had spent months underestimating had just demonstrated marksmanship skills that belonged in military legend. But perhaps more importantly, she had shown them that their assumptions about tactical possibilities were as wrong as their assumptions about personal capabilities. Maya Rodriguez climbed aboard the helicopter without fanfare. Her equipment secured her demeanor as professionally calm as always. But Martinez noticed something different in her eyes. The doubt was gone, replaced by quiet confidence that came from proving herself when proof mattered most. Dawn broke over the mountains as extraction helicopters touched down at Firebase Alpha. Maya Rodriguez stepped onto the landing zone, her uniform still marked with mountain grime and dried blood from the rocky climb. The Barrett rifle slung across her shoulder like an extension of herself. Word of the miraculous rescue had already spread through military communication channels, with the speed that extraordinary stories always traveled among professionals who understood their significance. Personnel emerged from buildings across the compound, drawn by whispers of an impossible tale. A single sniper had saved an entire SEAL team from annihilation. The same soldiers who had mocked her marksmanship training now stood in respectful silence. Martinez approached first, his face showing a complex mixture of gratitude, shame, and newfound respect. Rodriguez, he began, then stopped. How do you thank someone for rewriting the laws of tactical possibility? Maya met his gaze with steady composure. Staff Sergeant, what you did up there, I've never seen anything like it. The precision, the positioning, the tactical awareness. He shook his head slowly. We owe you everything. Then Colonel Harrison did something that shattered every assumption about military recognition and personal achievement. He raised his right hand in a crisp, formal salute, the kind of recognition reserved for acts of extraordinary valor that transcended normal performance standards. Maya returned the salute with equal precision, her spine straight, her expression reflecting years of training and determination that had finally found proper recognition. When both hands were lowered, Colonel Harrison spoke in a voice that carried across the silent compound. What you accomplished last night will be studied in Marine Special Operations training programs for decades to come. 31 confirmed enemy kills at ranges exceeding 900 meters in mountain conditions under extreme pressure, with 0 friendly casualties. He paused, letting the significance register completely. More importantly, this operation demonstrates that tactical innovation and personal initiative can overcome impossible odds when applied by someone with proper training and absolute dedication. Maya finally spoke, her voice clear and strong. Just doing my duty, sir. Following the training you provided and applying it when circumstances required action. Colonel Harrison almost smiled, an expression so rare that several personnel would remember this moment for the rest of their careers. Rodriguez, your assigned duty was communication support and rear area security. What you did was redefine the tactical possibilities available to small unit operations. From that moment forward, nobody called her Shadow Walker ever again. Maya Rodriguez had taken 31 shots that changed everything. Down in the valley, the SEALs fought with the desperation of men who knew the odds had turned against them. One operator pressed a bloody hand against his side and gritted his teeth, refusing to fall back. Another kept firing even after his rifle jammed, switching to a sidearm with a look of raw defiance. Over the comms came broken messages of hope fading fast. A team leader whispered into his headset, voice cracked with emotion, "If I don't make it out, tell my boy his father stood his ground." The words carried a chill that no mountain wind could match. Each man thought of family, of children, of promises left unfinished. What they didn't realize was that a soldier they had once dismissed as background was climbing toward a perch that could change everything. The climb up the eastern ridge punished every inch of Maya's body. The rocks sliced her palms, the cold gnawed at her lungs, and the weight of the Barrett rifle dug into her shoulders. Once her boots slipped on loose shale, and only a desperate grip kept her from falling hundreds of feet to her death. Below her, muzzle flashes ripped the darkness, each burst a reminder that every second mattered. Her thighs burned as if fire had replaced muscle, but she kept moving, driven by the knowledge that time was bleeding away as surely as her teammates' ammunition. With every painful yard, she asked herself if she was climbing toward salvation or climbing toward her grave. When Maya finally set the bipod of her rifle against the granite, the world narrowed into the glass of her scope. The battlefield transformed into a board of moving pieces, every enemy fighter a pawn or a knight ready to strike. She spotted a man with a rocket launcher creeping into position. Her finger squeezed once, and the weapon clattered harmlessly into the dirt before it could fire. Another shot dropped the gunner behind a heavy machine gun, the very one tearing through the SEAL's last line of defense. To her, it was not chaos, it was mathematics. Wind speed, distance, elevation, and timing lined up in her mind as clearly as chalk marks on a blackboard. For the first time, she felt the strange calm that only comes when purpose and skill meet at a single crosshair. Back at Fire Base Alpha, long after dawn had burned the frost off the peaks, Maya sat alone on the edge of a cot. Her hands shook as she scrubbed the dust and blood from her knuckles, remembering each trigger pull like a ghost pressing against her chest. She had saved lives, but in those hours, she had also ended many. The men she had protected approached one by one, offering words that were clumsy but genuine. One of them, a broad-shouldered SEAL who had once joked that she should stick to supply work, simply wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "You saved my brothers. You saved me." The embrace said what no medal could. Within days, word of the impossible rescue spread beyond classified channels. Pilots in distant bases whispered about a lone sniper on a ridge who had rewritten the rules of survival. At a bar outside Fort Bragg, soldiers passed the story like a legend, already grown larger than truth, the woman who had turned 31 shots into 24 lives preserved. A military journal later published a piece titled, "The Sniper Who Changed the Game." What had begun as ridicule with the name Shadow Walker was now retold with awe. And though Maya herself never sought the spotlight, the world seemed determined to carve her into a symbol of grit and defiance.